Welcome to this special council meeting of the Albion City Council, Monday, April 23rd, 2018. If you have a phone or electronic device, I ask you to place it on silent. I call this meeting to order, and we will begin with a moment of silence. Thank you. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Clerk Domingo, will you please call the roll?
Councilmember Barnes.
Here.
Reed. Here. Brown.
Here.
Lawler.
Here.
Spicer.
Here.
French.
Here.
And Mayor Brown.
Here. Are there any comments this evening from council? Councilmember French.
Thank you, Mayor. A couple of things. Just wanted to let everybody know that Albion College's commencement is the 5th of May, starting, I believe, at 1 o'clock in the afternoon. This year, our commencement speaker is Dr. Sam Shaheen, heart surgeon and urban developer who was foundational in the development of the hotel project and the Ludington Center. Honorary degrees will be given to Dr. Sam Shaheen, to Wes and Les Dick, and to Bill and Karen Dobbins in honor of all the work they've had in the community of Albion for Wes and Les anyway for 50 years. And so I just wanted to let everybody know that if the rain is not upon us on that day, the commencement is open to the public on the quad down by the Kresge gymnasium section. We welcome anybody and everybody to come and celebrate with us the class of 2018, as well as those receiving honorary degrees. And second, I'd like to call your attention to the fact that Ms. Lauren Freeman, who's been an AmeriCorps Vista member in Albion working for City Hall, this is her last council meeting, and I'd ask her to stand and be recognized and to come and tell us what her next plans are, because it's kind of exciting.
Hello. So I got a new position in my hometown, Cedar Rapids, Iowa, working for the city there, doing community development. So really excited, and just thank you for this opportunity to work with you all. It's been an amazing experience, and Albion will always really have a special place in my heart. So thank you.
Thank you and congratulations. Are there any further comments from council? Councilmember French.
Thank you, Mayor. And then finally, I'd like to thank our mayor for the first of, I hope, many community meetings at Sterling Books and Brew, for answering the public's question and helping to educate the public on what's going on in the city. I thank you for your efforts, Mayor.
Thank you. Seeing no further comments from council this evening, we will go on to the city manager report.
In this past week, we've received 2 grants. We received the Albion Community Foundation grant for $3,000 that goes towards the Albion Marshall Connector. And we also received a grant for canine healthcare, which will go for the healthcare for Lucy Joe for the next year. One thing I forgot to mention last week about the MDOT update at council was MDOT is planning on doing some repairs to both Irwin Avenue and Eaton Street prior to rerouting traffic that way. So that should start anytime soon once the asphalt plants are open and they can get the asphalt to resurface those areas that are in need of repair.
How much?
It will be between Superior and Eaton, so not much. And I don't know how much of that is going to be done either. So.
Okay. There are no presentations and there are no public hearings. Public comments. Persons addressing the city council, we ask that you limit your comments to no more than 3 minutes and to agenda items only. And for proper decorum, please state your name and your address. Are there any public comments this evening on the agenda? Okay. Seeing none, we'll go on to consent calendar. This is to approve our various session minutes, and then for various permits and for uses. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor say yes.
Yes.
Opposed? Okay. We've approved the items under the consent calendar. Items for individual discussion. Item A, request approval for Resolution 2018-12, a resolution for the the Michigan Community Development Block, CDBG, grant funding for the Peabody Block project.
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Do you want to speak to? For A.
Yeah. If I got the right one here, yeah.
Okay.
This was just a change that had to be done in order for me to be able to sign
Okay.
off on these.
Oh, okay.
It said city manager, and the state required us to change that to interim city manager because of my title being different. So so both of those will be on there now, so there won't be a needed change in the future either.
Okay. So we're just okay. So this is just basically a technicality that we're
Right.
fixing. Is there any discussion? Okay. Seeing none, we'll have a roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Barnes. Reed.
Yes.
Brown.
Yes.
Lawler.
Yes.
Spicer.
Yes.
French.
Yes.
And Mayor Brown.
Yes. Discussion of the 2018 recreation millage.
The millage is up for renewal this year. Currently, that millage is 1.5 mils. Tom can speak more to that, but
Hi, Tom Mead, Finance Department. What is driving this being on the agenda tonight is the 3-year recreation millage that we currently have matures at the end of this year, 2018. So this summer would be the last summer we could put it on the ballots, or I'm sorry, on the tax bills. So what we need to consider is a renewal to continue that millage. It's currently 1.5 mils. And in talking with Larry Williams, the Recreation Director, he said him and Cheryl had some discussions about possibly raising it or looking at maybe raising it a little bit, at least to cover what the school, what Marshall Public Schools is charged on the Recreation Department for being in the building up there. And I believe that charges $25,000 a year, at least that's what the memo said that I received from Larry. And if you compute that out, a $0.25 mil isn't going to cover that, especially when you take out captures. A $0.5 mil would more than cover it. So I don't know. I guess what we wanted to do to put this on the August ballot, we have to have everything, including the ballot language and everything, ready to submit. It's got to be approved by council and submitted to the county by May 15th. So what we would like to do tonight is get direction from you, the council, as to whether you want to renew just the 1.5. Obviously, the one choice, I guess, is do nothing, but I don't think we want to do that. Renew it at 1.5 or increase it. And then we could put that language together, bring it back to you Monday, the 7th, is it, of May, and get a vote and approval, and then we can submit it to the county.
Okay. Councilmember French.
I would move that we move it up to 2. I think one of the things that we've been doing for a long time since we lost the permanent rec department is we've kind of been operating on a shoestring. A 0.5 increase in a millage per household is not a significant amount. And our rec department does an awful lot of good in our community, so I would support a move to cover the expenses of the recreation department, give us a little bit of a cushion that we might be able to build up on a fund balance if we need to sort of help for some expensive things like perhaps redoing the pool or something like that. So I would suggest we move that to 2. Yeah, thanks.
So one of the things that I want to say that was last year. I just can't remember when, but I'm not opposed to asking the voters for more funding for recreation, but I'm curious about if we could get numbers about, I guess, the usage and programming. You know, because I know in the past, and this is just off the top of my head, that there may have been times where, you know, sometimes, you know, either staff or people kind of dug in their pocket and helped people with if there were any kind of like equipment needs, and just kind of see what we could do, because, you know, the 25, I didn't know that, but I just kind of would want to have a kind of overview of like how many people, what are the numbers? Because I know we're also required to do, some of that money is kind of siphoned off to the Fork Senior Center, right?
Yep. Correct.
So I would want to know like what's the status of the usage in terms of what citizens or the young people are using, so that we can have a sense of how we prioritize it. So I'm not like so basically to summarize it, I'm not against going to 2 mills, but I would like to know what we're doing with what we have to see if we need to make other changes.
And to answer the comment you made earlier about the Fork Senior Center, currently and for the last couple of years, I think that's what had been planned going forward. I guess that's always negotiable, but right now we're paying them $8,700 a year to the Fork Senior Center. And I don't know if I put some numbers in here. If people are interested, I can go through it with you, unless you've had a chance, and if it makes sense to you. But it just kind of shows, obviously, we've had the declining trend in taxable values citywide. Now, the good news, for the first time, based on the preliminary numbers I've received from Julie, the assessing, for the first time since 2008, the taxable value actually increased in 2018 based on what she's looking at for March board review. So assuming there aren't any big changes that come about, we actually might see that our revenues start to increase a little bit again from taxes or property taxes. It's not a significant increase, but an increase is better than a decrease. So, but again, as taxable values decline, the revenue coming in from the millage declines, and then of course you got to take out the TIFA captures and DDA captures and stuff. So, you know, you're right, they haven't had a big budget. It is kind of a shoestring, but.
Okay. Are there any other questions from council? So I guess we'll just wait for, because we're going to need to approve the language, but maybe by that next meeting we could have Mr. Williams kind of present on some of that. So,
okay.
Thank you. Item D is a discussion on the Union Steel building. Councilmember Lawler, do you want to speak to that, or do you want to?
Yeah, I can do that. There was an email that Krista has sent me, just basically saying that she was waiting on getting EPA done, and right now she's in the process of the paperwork to get the EPA done. So at this time, there's really nothing to discuss besides precinct 2 and 4 getting together and seeing, actually coming up with some ideas of what we would like to see there. I kind of took on the responsibility for it, but because it borders 2 and 4, she would like to see us come together as unity and decide, you know, if it's good, what would we do with it? If it's bad and nothing can go there, what do we want to do with it?
Okay.
So, we're just at a standstill right now.
Okay. Thank you. Is there any questions from council regarding that issue? Councilmember Brown.
Thank you, Mayor. So did the county land bank give a rough estimate for this EPA that they're trying to get?
I think that is the 5,800. The overall cost for safety improvements is 5,800. That's what it says in the email.
No date.
Yeah, I meant time frame.
She hasn't given one.
Okay, thank you.
I guess it's just paperwork being done.
It's a little bit more than paperwork
Councilmember
that's being
Reed.
done, but still, it's going to take time.
Okay.
It's the feds.
So, okay, we're going to move on, seeing no further questions to a discussion or update, John? Yeah, okay, on the asbestos inspection for 608 Austin Ave? Director Tracy.
John Tracy, Director, Planning, Building, and Code. The asbestos assessment company was in last week and pulled out 60 samples from both inside the building and exterior. We should have the results on that either tomorrow or this Wednesday. Then we can move forward from that point.
Okay. Okay. Are there any questions for council? Councilman French.
John, is it possible for us to see those as soon as they come in, or would you prefer to send it to us after you've had a chance to think about it and send it to us by the first council meeting in May?
I can send it to you as soon as they come in. That's not a problem.
Thank you.
Yep. Thank you. Seeing no further discussion, we'll move on to item E, discussion approval to set date for council rules and procedures study session with Attorney Scott Smith. Let's see. So with this, I believe we were going to set, the way what we had originally approved was having the council identify some areas, but we can do that with him. So we're going to set a date. I know today, let's see, the 23rd, we have a meeting on the 7th. We don't really know, do we know his availability? We just probably give him a couple dates.
Next week.
Yeah, I would say next week. I just don't know. Let's see, the 30th. Councilmember French.
So Mondays and Thursdays are typically when council have met at special meetings.
Okay.
Is that still good for everybody? We give them those 2 evenings?
So I kind of agree. So we'd say Monday, April 30th, and then Thursday, May 3rd. Were there any objections to that or concerns? Okay. So basically either a week from today or that following Thursday. So those are the 2 dates, and they would probably be at 7. We can do 6:30 or 7. Like, is there a preference for 6:30 or 7?
7.
Does anyone object to 7?
6:30. Councilman Brown would like to be at 6:30. I'm okay with that.
I would prefer 6:30 only because,
I get you.
yeah.
Okay. So we're gonna because I'm not hearing objections, we're gonna set the dates that we're gonna ask him to see if he's available will be basically Monday, April 30th at 6:30 or Thursday, May 3rd at 6:30 here at the council chambers. Councilmember French.
If we wanted to offer him a third time, could we offer it the 26th, or is that too soon?
I think this week might be a little bit too soon.
Okay.
Yeah. So we could say, or as a third one, let's just say like May 10th.
I will not be here, May.
Ah, okay.
That's fine. Give him 2 choices.
Okay. Councilmember Lawler.
You said April 30th?
Yep, April 30th and then May 3rd. So he'll choose which one works best for him.
And the 30th is not a good.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
So let's say the 3rd and I really maybe what I would say. Oh, you're gonna be gone on the 10th, aren't you? Do Tuesdays work at all? Would May like May 8th?
I won't be here May 8th either.
What about Tuesday, May 1st?
I will be here.
Okay, so let's.
You're saying 3 in 1 week?
No, what I'm saying is I'm giving him 2 dates from which to choose.
Okay.
And so we know that May 3rd, Thursday works. And I guess now I'm just suggesting a Tuesday, May 1st.
So 2 of those 3 days.
So, yeah, either or of those 2 days.
So the 1st or
the 1st or the 3rd of May. Would those 2 days work for the council?
Yes.
Okay. It seems like, so those are the 2 dates we'll share with Attorney Smith, so basically Tuesday, May 1st, and Thursday, May 3rd at 6:30. Yes.
Just a heads up, Lauren from my office will be here.
Okay. Okay.
Gee, I can't imagine why you won't be there.
Okay.
I know.
Okay. So we've set a date. I think we don't really need to prove that. That was just setting the date. So we've set a date for on item E. We'll move on to item F. Request approval for purchase of 114 West Ash Street from Calhoun County Land Bank for $1.
So moved.
Oh, and for $370 for title insurance.
So moved.
Okay, is there a second?
Support.
Moved and supported. Any discussion? Interim Manager Kip.
This property is to purchase the remainder of that lot from the land bank. There was a house there at one time which burned down, and the land bank took possession of it at that point. There's parking lot there now. It's dirt. This will allow us to redo that entire area with the grant money that we have coming in to finish that lot.
Okay. Oh, and then the one, oh, well, we discussed, we don't know the time frame.
For fixing it?
Yeah.
We've been in discussions with our engineering company. Being where the plans are right now, we're thinking it's probably going to be late September before they get started on this, mainly because this time of year it's difficult to get these projects started, and we'd probably pay a lot more, and the engineers feel that we could probably get a really good deal if we wait till late September to do this, and plus it'll get us through the construction downtown before we tear up a lot behind the building.
Okay. Is there any further discussion? Okay. Roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Brown,
Yes.
Lawler,
Yes.
Spicer,
Yes.
French,
Yes.
Barnes, Reed,
Yes.
and Mayor Brown.
Yes. Request first reading of ordinance 2018, number 2018-05, an ordinance to amend Article 5 of Chapter 22, Section 22 through 205 for the Albion Code of Ordinances, Code of Ordinances for medical marijuana facilities license application evaluation. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second? Okay, moved and supported. Attorney Harkness.
Thank you. So there were a couple of things that we changed here. I'll just highlight the substantive changes first. Obviously, with this, the major change is that under section 2207, we've changed it from prohibiting provisioning centers to allowing provisioning centers. Based on our conversation from our last meeting, I've listed the hours of a prohibited operation such that no provisioning center shall be open between 8 p.m. and 9 a.m. The other thing that we discussed was that no provisioning center will allow a physician to conduct a medical exam or issue medical certification documents on site. That's to remedy the issue that came up a lot in some of the larger communities like Grand Rapids, Ann Arbor, where basically and I use the term doctor loosely, they would have a doctor there and just say, oh, yep, I'll write a prescription, go get your weed. Kind of circumvents the intent of the act. The other major changes that we made were in section 22-12, where we added provisioning centers with the distance requirements from public parks, from places of religious worship, from residential zoning districts. Now, the only question that I have for you, I mean, the way that we've got this drafted right now is it basically says distance from the facility to a place of religious worship. The one thing that Director Tracy and I discussed is whether the council, if it's the intent of council for it to be from the facility, distance from the facility itself, or distance from the lot line upon which the facility is on, from those various parks, places of religious worship, or residential areas. I bring that up because since we're making these changes, if that's an issue, we should address it while we're making the change tonight. And then I've also added in that same section that the provisioning centers are limited to the B3, M1, P, M2, and M2P zoning districts. The other thing that I would like the council to address is we have a provision, and this has recently become an issue, and I think it's important for the city to clarify it. On our application procedures, this would be under section 2204, number 22. We have verification that there's liquid funds in the applicant's name enough to complete the medical marijuana facility, but in no event, no less than $250,000 in immediate liquid available funds. The first applicant that we've had provided documentation that they had $1.5 million because they were seeking 5 or 6 licenses. I can't remember how many. I think it was 5 or 6. Might have been 6, yeah. But I think it's important to clarify that that should be $250,000 in immediate liquid available funds per license, not total. I think if you had, the problem the city's going to run into is if it's interpreted to be total, you could end up having an undercapitalized business, which is the opposite of what the state's trying to do. The emergency rules for the city that Licensing and Regulatory Affairs put out, they have capitalization amounts for each state operating license, not just the applications collectively. So that's a change I think that the council should make tonight. All I'm recommending on that is that that we just add the words after available funds per license, and that would remedy that issue.
So,
yes.
So, well, continue then.
Those are basically all the changes. The only other thing that I noticed is when I went through here, for whatever reason, there was a sequencing error, and so I just did a paragraph at the end that renumbers the paragraphs. They were all off by 1. Something got deleted in the drafts, so now all the ordinances will flow in order. There was a gap. For some reason, 2202 wasn't there. But other than that, that's it. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Councilmember French.
So I would say that the distances should be from the boundary line, simply because, especially some of the parcels that we're looking at, you could end up being, the parcels are big enough that you don't even have to do the fencing at all because your parcel's big enough that the boundary line of 250 would be, say, inside property. I would prefer it to be within the boundary of property rather than the boundary of the physical building. And I would also agree with your assessment about per license requirements. Although I am a little concerned that by having such a provision, you are basically eliminating any potential small business owner that might want to get into the business because you're asking for an awful lot of money. But I respect the state's concern about that and be willing to approve that.
So, two things. I'm going to reverse order here. The question about the having enough capital per license. So just to make it plain, what we're talking about is if someone has, I don't know, they apply for 3 licenses, they're going to have $1 million so plus whatever it is.
3 licenses would be $750,000.
Okay. Okay. Okay.
So, I mean, for example, I can tell you the capitalization requirements for the state. The total, and I'm reading directly from the rules here, the total amounts of capitalization based on the marijuana facility specified in the application for a state operating license are as follows. So what we've gotten so far are Class C licenses. So for a Class C license, the state requires that the facility demonstrate that they've got at least $500,000 in liquid capital.
Okay.
All we're requesting is $250 per license now. Obviously, they'll have to meet the state requirements as well. They vary the amounts for different facilities. Most municipalities just pick a consistent number and do it across the facilities, which is what I recommend to the city. Okay.
And then, you know, back to the distances, you know, yeah. So Councilmember French raises an interesting concern. So, as it stands right now, what his hypothetical is there might be a facility and a field, but it's far enough away where it would need a fence.
Well, an example of what would happen if you do go from the property line that the facility is on, for example, up into B3, you have a strip mall up there that's property runs from adjacent to Beamer Street all the way to the expressway. So if an individual were to rent out a section of building on that property, which is all one parcel, at the north end of the building, they still would not be able to do that because the property itself at the far end would be less than 250 feet from residential. And the same thing would happen on Beamer Street in the 400 block area and down to the end. It would basically put all that property off limits for any type of medical marijuana processing center. So you're basically taking it down to a small section unless people start splitting up property, actually, land divisions.
So the question I have is, are we this the clarity that we're trying to provide here, is it providing it for all of the facilities in all of the zoned areas that we've approved, or is it just for one particular type of facility?
This would be for all facilities. This was something that before the meeting, Director Tracy indicated that it might be wise to, I mean, I can tell you, as it sits right now, for example, paragraph A reads that no board facility, safety compliance facility, processor facility, provisioning center, secure transporter shall be located within 500 feet of real property comprising a private, public or private elementary licensed childcare. It's basically school. So the way that reads is, I mean, I take that to mean the facility itself, the structure itself cannot be located within 500 feet of the school. So the question is that okay for council, or does council want it to be the property upon which that facility is situated? The boundary of the property cannot be within 500 feet of the school, and so on and so forth for the remaining property, remaining facility.
So with that interpretation, if we kept that interpretation, let's say to the actual facility, would that have any impact for, like, for example, M1 or so I feel like I'm in a vision center. M2, right? Just the industrial park, that whole area. Would it affect any of the fencing things that would go on there?
M2 actually could affect the property up in probably, what would it be, the 900 block of Austin Avenue.
So in terms of not having to have a fence?
Well, if you go by the edge of the property, it could wind up making a difference whether or not they could have any type of facility there or not, if the lot's relatively large, for example.
Incidentally, I did add to the distance paragraphs with the exception of the school one. I added language where we had the fence requirements built in. There's now language that reads that the fence requirement contained herein may be waived if the city deems a fence to be impractical with the location of this facility, and if the facility has other adequate security measures to ensure the security of the premises and safety of the public.
Okay. So, go, Councilmember Brown.
Thank you, Mayor. So, Attorney Harkness, the way this is drafted right now, it's measured from the building itself, not the end of the lot, right?
That's how I would take it. Now, I think it depends on, to a certain extent, it's a little bit subjective in how the facility sets itself up. So, for example, if we have a facility and they erect a boundary fence around, you know, if we have, for example, we've got one application already that, what is the old facility they took over?
Corrugated.
Corrugated. So, based upon their plan, my understanding, they're gonna have a fence around the perimeter of that. Now, I would say in that case, since they're adding basically structure around their own structure, we can measure from that boundary. But any facility that we have that doesn't already, or doesn't intend to have something around the outer perimeter, we might have to find ourselves, you know, are we measuring from the building or are we measuring from the lot line? So.
Councilmember French.
Thank you, Mayor. I think we're talking about two different things. The first is whether a facility needs a fence, and the second is whether the facility can go there at all. Am I correct in that? Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, Mayor. But so part of me is if we go from the building rather than the property line, then if a medical marijuana facility wanted to go in the strip mall that Tractor Supply is in, if we base it on the building distance, then it doesn't need a fence because the school building is more than 250 feet away from that boundary line. But if we go with the boundary line,
Yeah, continue.
that north side of the strip mall by Tractor Supply is more than 250 feet away from the high school. The high school building? Oh, yeah.
No, it's, but, no, what I understand, my understanding is, for example, let's take the high school building. It's not just the high school building, it's that whole,
right.
All the fields are.
Right, but that's what I'm saying, right? I thought what we were saying is that we were talking about boundary from a building.
No, we're talking about, so a park, from my understanding, the park, religious entity, whatever.
Okay.
There's their,
Yeah.
Go ahead.
The way it's stated in there is that from the facility to the real property of an R district, for example. So if you have a facility, say that's in the strip mall on the west side of North Eaton Street, and the facility is in a building there, and that facility is more than 250 feet away, the way it reads is suggestive to saying that that's okay, but the property it's on is not actually 250 feet away. So the real property that it's on.
So,
Councilor,
just to clarify, so we're talking about the boundary of the medical marijuana property, or the building of the medical marijuana building, not the school or the.
No, so we're saying, so we're basically taking the residential, religious, educational, real property. And then from there, are we measuring it to the actual plot? I don't know if it's called plot, but the property line of the facility or the actual facility building.
Okay, so I retract I had it backwards, so
Okay.
I retract my suggestion.
Okay, so yeah, I think we keep it just to the building.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I apologize for what saying. I just had.
Oh yeah, no problem. And that won't. So, but you mentioned the thing about the fencing. That is tied to fencing, though. That would involve fencing because, you know, if you're outside the 250 or 500, you don't need a fence, right?
Well, they can't be within 200 feet, period, of everything except for
250.
schools.
250.
Schools are 500.
250.
Right, you can't be within 250, period. If it's between that 250 and 500 mark, they're required to have a fence, unless it's waived by council because they have other security.
Okay.
So, for example, use the provisioning center going into a commercial slot like at the strip mall, it wouldn't make sense to have fencing there, so that would be
They got cameras.
Okay. So that's fine. I just wanted clarification on that.
So then the only modification for tonight would be to add the per license language to the capitalization paragraph.
Yeah. Is there any other discussion, questions? Okay, so basically we've clarified the distances to the from the real property of the particular institutions to the actual facility building. We have banned having doctors in the facilities to issue licenses. We have put hours on operation, and then the last thing we did the capitalization thing, or yeah, making sure you have enough money per license, and then what was the last thing? You just said it.
Added the fence language, the optional security measures.
Okay, yeah. Are there any other questions or discussion or comments from council?
This would take effect June 7th.
Okay. Councilmember Brown.
Thank you, Mayor. So this is the first reading. The second reading would be in May, correct?
Second reading is set for the first meeting in May.
Okay. And then,
So May 7th, and then the effective date becomes June.
okay, thank you.
Okay, seeing no further discussion, we'll have a roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Lawler,
Yes.
Spicer,
Yes.
French,
Yes.
Barnes,
Yes.
Reed,
Yes.
Brown,
Yes.
and Mayor Brown.
Yes. We'll go on here to item H, council goals. We discussed at a previous, I want to say a study session, and I made a list. The list basically, the list included that we had come up with included neighborhood stabilization, infrastructure, governance. There was some discussion about development and kind of long-term, like planning, right? So coordinating, kind of just administrative planning citywide. Were there any additional concerns that have come up in terms of goals? Because I'm going to come back to this, but I just want to get some more input. Okay. Okay, so, Councilman Brown.
Thank you, Mayor. So I was unable to attend the goal-setting session. So my question is, was everything accomplished in that session, or is there a need for an additional session?
I think it's a need for an additional session.
Okay.
But like I said, I look at my calendar. I don't want to push it too far.
We just took a look at those.
Councilmember French.
We didn't really discuss anything.
I think we looked at these 7 items, and so my question then is it would the next meeting that we would have, would that be in sort of getting down into the weeds and what each of those goals looks like and prioritizing, or just simply prioritizing these 7 and we're going to now rank them?
I think what I have in mind is I know not for the most recent goal setting, but the one right before it. In a weird way, it was simpler, and then, because basically there were I want to say there were 7 then. So I don't think there's either or, but I think we can just come with what we did at the last previous study session, and then kind of flesh those out, right? So infrastructure was one of the main ones. So we know we have to deal with what we're going to do about sidewalks, what we're going to have to do for planning for, let's say, a water tower. So yeah.
So we're going to get down into the weeds of each one and
Yeah.
figure out what our priorities.
Yeah.
That's all I just wanted to know,
Yeah.
as long
So
as
what meeting
we
are
know
we-
what the expectations are.
The question, I guess, basically the question becomes, when do we want to do that? And,
Week I'm gone, because you can't wait too much longer than that.
yeah, but, you're gone
I'm gone, I'll miss the first meeting in May, I'll be gone all that week.
okay. What is next week looking like?
The 14th, May 14th is the second Monday of the month.
Is that too far back?
I appreciate you waiting for me to come back, I appreciate that. I just, if you think it's a fine time, I'm fine with pushing it to the 14th. I just don't know what your expectations are. I just don't want to get in the way of a process just because I'm getting retrained.
Oh, no, my whole thing is I just want to make sure that we don't push it too far. So basically we have next week, and then we have the week of the 14th. So it's basically which of those weeks? Councilmember Brown and Councilmember Reed. Thank
you, Mayor. So I guess, what's wrong with this week, later this week, Thursday?
Nothing.
That works. It worked for me.
Thursday works for me.
Does that work for
26th?
council?
If
Councilmember
we
Reed.
put governance at number one to be just, we can do that when we work with Scott Smith on the Thursday.
Yeah, I think that's what we're going to talk about. So I guess,
And so they'll take care of that one, then we just have the rest of them
Right.
to work through on.
so would Thursday work for council? This Thursday?
This Thursday?
Yeah.
Works for me.
Me too.
Okay. And we'll say, what, 6:30?
Yes.
Would that work? We can change. I don't think it's going to be long. I don't think it's going to be long. So,
I'd prefer 7, just so I can get dinner, but
You can bring dinner.
well, let's do. We're gonna compromise here. So I'm gonna just ask for 7, because I don't think it's going to take that long. Because I think we kind of know what we need to do, and so we'll
Thank you.
be brief. So we'll say Thursday. This Thursday at 7, and I'm not hearing anyone saying they can't attend. So can you? Okay.
wait. Rehearsal dinner is not till the next day. What the heck?
Okay. So we've set that for goals. Just a more thorough discussion of that for this Thursday, the 26th at 7. We'll go into update for Project Rising Tide. So basically, we convened, when the governor was here, we convened kind of a panel of residents. And what I'd like to ask the council to do is to have that panel reconvene. And I can, if council's okay with it, we'll work with the interim manager and the staff to pull them together, because what we need to do is probably set a meeting with them and the state agency people, and then have the discussion around those 3 top goals. And so that's basically the update. That's making sure there's no kind of objection to doing that, and then it comes back to council. But Councilmember French, Councilmember Lawler.
Go ahead. I've been talking too much.
Councilmember Lawler.
Thank you, Mayor. Who decides what the 3 will be?
Well, that's kind of what I'm saying. I'm going to ask the group that was impaneled to make a recommendation to us for those 3 things versus us just picking 3.
So council will have
Well, it's going to come back to us, but I think they can make a suggestion about, what. Because, like, for example, at the earlier discussion, the one thing I mentioned is, and it was really obvious during the panel with the governor, housing is going to be, I'm pretty sure that's going to be, if not like number 1, number 2, it's going to be on the 3. So the other 2, I think I would just leave it up to them to make a recommendation to us, if council wants that. But is there a particular concern that you have?
I do.
Okay, what's your concern?
Well, since you asked.
Repeat what you're asking us to.
So basically, we've partnered and approved an agreement with the state for the Rising Tide project when Governor Snyder came down. And as part of moving that forward, we have to select 3 kind of key projects or categories that we want their assistance with. And so what I'm trying to do is just to make sure that the group that was impaneled, that spoke with the governor, can make a recommendation to the council about what those areas or projects are that the community would like assistance with. So like one of the things that came out during that discussion was the need for housing. And so they would just be, we'd meet with the state, we'd have the discussion, and then we would settle, it would come back to council, and the council would make that clear that those are the top 3 things we want to do. So, Councilmember French.
Thank you, Mayor. At that meeting with the governor, there was an inner circle and there was an outer circle.
Mm-hmm.
Are you saying that only those on the inner circle will be part of this commission, or will everybody who is in that room be invited?
Honestly, I don't see a problem with including the people who were there. I think the constraints we have were basically constraints from, with the state.
I just want to know. I have no objection to either choice.
Yeah.
I just want to know whether I should clear my schedule or.
Well, I will say, I think because we're on council, I think the thing about the council kind of taking a back seat to that will probably still be in place, but I don't see a problem with including the outer ring. Yeah. Okay. Councilmember Brown and Lawler.
Thank you, Mayor. So I do have an opinion, although I wasn't asked for it. I'm going to give it.
Okay.
So I think the dynamic in that room that day was awesome. I also think that sometimes you can have too many people involved, and we're trying to hear a recommendation for the top 3 goals, and it's just my opinion that the people at that panel and at that table, I think that's plenty. Just my opinion. As far as identifying the top 3 goals, I think the people in the outer circle brought a lot of things, different things to that room. But for that conversation, I felt like that inner circle was effective, and that's who, in my opinion, we should call back to the table to identify the 3 goals. That's just my opinion, though. Thank you.
Councilmember Lawler.
Thank you, Mayor. So let me just recap this. You were asking me, did I have a suggestion about the panel coming together, or was you asking me my opinion about the topics, the chosen 3?
Oh no, what I'm asking more. So I think it's a good question. What I'm asking is, would you object, or council object, to just having that panel meet again, and out of that meeting come up with the 3 things that we want, and then having them recommend that to the council? So we're still going to discuss it, but I think part of it is to make sure that we're hearing really what the core needs are, because I think all of us are involved enough where we kind of know, in detail, like what's going on. But then I think there are other people who are in the community who, through their various groups or religious organizations or whatnot, they're having certain, they're encountering certain issues, and so they might know something. For example, one of the things that happened at the panel, there was a local business owner who was saying, well, my business is doing really well, so well, in fact, that it's hard for me to find a place to live. And so that, kind of really put the focus on the need for more housing. So what I'm saying is, they would meet and they would suggest 3 things that would come back to us. So we would still discuss it, but just it would be filtered through the panel. Councilmember Lawler.
So what if a recommendation was made, but we may not agree?
I think ultimately we're going to have to make that call. You know, because I think part of it is, my understanding was that it has to be something that is achievable within the scope of the program, right? So we can't ask the state, hey, you know, we need help for repaving all the streets in Albion. But we, you know, we can say, well, if we want to do, you know, a plan, an infrastructure plan, they might be able to help us with that. So it has to be something that's kind of achievable with their expertise. So that's where the council can step in and say, well, you know, that, you know, a particular recommendation might not make sense. So I think we will have a chance to weigh in. Councilmember Reed?
What would you think about doing a robocall of the city and have people kind of just put out there what some of the things would be that would, and they could number what they want?
Honestly, I just think that'd be hard to do in terms of time frame.
I know there's some groups that's already started working on something that are needed. So how do you figure out just who is doing what when?
Well, I think
unless you get a tally of what people are thinking.
I think part of it, so the panel is pretty representative, I think, of different interests in town. And so then, like I said, ultimately, like I was saying to Councilmember Lawler, it's going to come back to us once they make the recommendation. And so we're going to know, for example, we know that, you know, the city has been pretty supportive of, or has gone on record to support, let's say, for example, the Big Albion plan. So, you know, we're going to know more about what's going on. So if we need to, you know, adjust that, because basically the state's offering to help us, but they're offering to help us with projects that are achievable and of enough, you know, a limited enough scope where they can actually help us, not like a broad, you know, list of things. So, Councilmember Spicer, I saw your hand up. Councilmember Lawler, Councilmember Brown.
Thank you, Mayor. I think that there was considerable time and effort put into selecting the persons to be at the table when they met with the governor. So I think that that group is, I agree with Councilwoman Brown, that I think that initially it's a good place to start. I do think that it could become too much if we invited the entire, was it 30 plus? 50. Okay. So, but I think what you could do is we could invite the people who are up at the table. We could also reach out to the people who were in the room for their ideas as well. And that way, their ideas would be considered when council makes a final decision. But I think we should start with just the people at the table. Okay. I mean, that's a large group in and of itself.
Councilmember Lawler, Councilmember Brown.
Thank you, Mayor. So, just to kind of help me out, if you would, Council and Mayor, about the project Rising Tide. So what if we have, well, I know we do have, out of all the people that were sitting at the table, there was one particular organization that I felt definitely needed help. All of those people that were at the table, their organizations, except for one, is operating out of their building. So to help me get a better understanding of Project Rising Tide, are we able to tie that into this Project Rising Tide? Because this particular organization is not in the big plan, it's not in the redevelopment ready plan, but it would be beneficial to us. It would be beneficial to us. I'm done hearing about how the city does not help nonprofits, because we are doing it. Maybe not us as council members, but other entities are helping other nonprofits. And this particular nonprofit would bring revenue. Out of the 5 or 6 great things that are happening in the downtown area, it is the only business that is not included it's included in the downtown area, but it's not included in the downtown area. So I'm asking is, are we able to include someone that is not in the big plan, the redevelopment ready plan? Are we able to include somebody in that? I mean, that's not included in those two plans. Are we able to include them in this Rising Tide plan?
Okay. Councilmember Reed, and I'll respond.
Okay,
Oh, I'm sorry. I apologize. Just at a point of order.
Point of order. No.
Sorry. Councilmember Brown, then Councilmember Reed.
Thank you, Mayor. Basically, my question is, I know the state probably has a timeline, and they want these goals at a specific time, and I'm wondering, when do they want these goals identified?
And that's something that we're going to have to discuss and reach back out to them. But
to find out?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Reed.
okay. I know a lot of the people I've been talking to have been talking about, and there, I mean, we've got people who live outside of Michigan who are talking about relocating back, that went to school here and different things. So they're talking about affordable housing. And Mr. Smith took a group of us on a trip over to Battle Creek to look at some housing and stuff like this. And aren't things like that really what they're talking about, doing things that are going to bring income to your city, programs that are going to be
So my understanding, so to just make sure we kind of move quickly here. My understanding is in the communities that usually have been awarded Project Rising Tide, the state comes in and basically helps the city do what we were able to do. So basically there's the redevelopment ready communities thing. And what that is basically it's a list of things, tasks, that need to be accomplished so that the state is able to assist you in terms of funding. So basically if you have an updated master plan and you have a capital improvements plan and all those things that Dr. Mitchell from the administrative side helped to push forward. Once you have all those things, that checklist done with redevelopment ready communities, you're basically in a good place for the state to come in and help you, if you want to apply for a grant or something like that. Well, Albion's in a unique position because we were actually ahead of the game. So we've basically completed perhaps, 90% of the redevelopment ready communities checklist things. So we're pretty advanced compared to, let's say, like Paw Paw. And so the whole idea is that most, just like Albion sometimes does not have a whole bunch of staff power just because of our finances, Project Rising Tide would basically help, the state would come in and help us do redevelopment ready communities things. But now since we're pretty close to finishing that, we're a little different. So we have to kind of find some other things that are, again, can be limited to do that. So with what you're saying, yes, I think that that's something that they could help us do. So for example, I was at the presentation for senior housing, and I think they mentioned there was a particular facility in Detroit where they had to kind of use different pieces of funding to make that work. So that's something that the state could help us do, because it's more like a planning, kind of planning thing, not necessarily just giving us money. Councilmember Lawler, I'm not sure, well, I'll say it this way. My sense is that if any organization, which will be at the table, can show that, hey, like for example, talking about the senior housing, I think that one of the things they were talking about at that meeting is, they had one organization that handled like meals, like food. Another did, people who are kind of, I can't remember all the details, but they basically put all the providers together to compile something that worked. And so I think that the answer to that is if there's any organization that is doing work that can fit and provide a service, I think that that might allow a possibility for partnership. But I don't think this is a thing where we just say, okay, we're going to, directly, do something for like the Fork Senior Center. We're just going to just give them support for something. I think it would have to be like, if we said we want, if one of the three things were we wanted wraparound senior services, then it would be something where we would say, okay, like which parts are fitting together. So I'm hoping that I'm making sense. It's basically saying I don't think there's going to be like a direct intervention into something, but I do think if we create a structure, it'll be easier for organizations that can show they can fit in to that structure. So, 1 second. Councilmember French, did you have your hand up?
I just wanted to read for the record what the Project Rising Tide says on its website. The Rising Tide Project supports vibrant, thriving communities to attract business investment and talent by creating a sustainable path toward economic stability and growth. The Michigan Economic Development Corporation, Talent Investment Agency, and Michigan State Housing Development Authority, collectively, the Talent and Economic Development Team, TED, have committed their assets to engaging specific communities across the state in order to empower them to shape their future and maximize economic potential. So that's sort of a summary of what our mayor has just said, that it's about helping cities to create structures around which partners can align to meet the needs of the city. So if we're talking about youth development, say maybe youth development becomes one of the big things that the city wants to focus on, then organizations that do youth development would then have to partner with, so that the state then supports a group of partnerships rather than a single nonprofit or a single for-profit entity. So, so think of it as a bigger kind of overarching structure that the city is working to create, into which many partners can fit.
And the other thing is that's a discussion that's going to happen
at that meeting.
So I think that's the Councilmember Brown.
Thank you, Mayor. So I know that you stated earlier that you and Interim City Manager Kip would need to reach out to the state to see when those 3 goals are due. When are you looking to pull in this panel together? When will we know? Is there an update that you two can provide to council at the May 7th meeting?
Yes, if not sooner, because that's probably just a call to Emily tomorrow.
Thank you.
So, did I answer your question? We'll talk. Yeah, because I get what you're saying, but we
just want to say that
we have to operate within.
I'm for helping, and I did attend the senior assisted living complex that I think it's called the Throne, with the 4 different people that came together to get this senior community together, and it was very awesome, beautiful, mixed income, very nice. So I guess what I was asking was if it wasn't a part of the big plan or the redevelopment ready plan, could it still be an option? This organization that I'm thinking about, would it still be able to be an option for the Project Rising Tide? Because without giving up too much information, this entity does have and has been working on and has succeeded into getting partners.
But I think the core thing is it has to be, it has to be focused around a theme, right? So it has to be like kind of what Councilmember French would say is it has to be like youth, right? It couldn't be just like I said earlier. I mean, like I was saying earlier, it couldn't be Fork Senior Center. It had to be like senior services. So it's not specific, but that's conversations that we can have. So just for, and I appreciate the council for discussing. So basically my understanding that we'll go forward with is we're okay with the core panel meeting again, making a recommendation of 3 things to the council, which we will review and disapprove, and then we'll get the time frame from the state as soon as possible and share that with the council. We're going to move on to item J, request approval of sale of property for 702, 704. This is the various addresses there along West Erie Street. And, well, is there a roll call? Is there a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Support.
Moving seconded. Do you want to talk about?
Probably give you a better understanding of the sale of the property.
Well, I guess I would say this first to the council. There's a request to purchase property, but there hasn't been an offer extended to the best of my knowledge as to an amount. So I don't know that the council can approve the sale of property tonight because we haven't really been offered anything other than interest to purchase property. If you were, for those of you who weren't on council, I remember when we did this at the beginning of 2016, we did a charter amendment, a resolution rather, and then it was voted on later that year where we modified a portion of the charter as it relates to property that's tax or registered county such that we no longer have to sell it at fair market value, rather it can be sold for an amount determined by council after a public hearing. That specifically addresses tax reverted property. Some of these parcels are tax reverted property parcels. I think there's a couple of them that aren't. The ones that aren't, I think it's safe for the council to follow the same procedure because we don't have any other procedure for the sale of real property owned by the city. So I guess my recommendation to the council tonight would be you've got this expression of interest from this resident that wants to buy property. I guess it's in their court to make the city an offer before the council can consider whether or not you want to sell one or two or all of the lots to that resident and for what amount.
Councilmember Brown.
Thank you, Mayor. So I know the resident is here. Can you speak, how does he go about doing that? Because I do believe he had a conversation with somebody. I know there was a conversation that happened. I don't know the details. I didn't ask. So could you speak to how the resident could make the offer for these lots or for the one, whatever? Does he need to offer a price for each lot, or can he offer a price for all four together, or how does he do that?
I think, okay, so the procedure that I would recommend, I think that you can do it either way. You can make it per lot, you can do it collectively. You should probably submit that to either the interior manager or to the clerk, and then at the next meeting, the council would need to discuss whether or not it wants to make a counter offer or decline the offer or accept the offer. If you want to accept the offer, you're going to need to have a public hearing on it before you can officially vote on it.
Okay. So I have, I'm sorry.
Go continue. You're good.
Well, thank you. So I guess that's good information to have. I don't know why that information wasn't available prior to tonight. So those steps could have been taken, but at least now we know. Thank you.
Sure. Councilmember Barnes.
For clarity, this situation arose under former city manager Bishop. It did come to the attention of our former city manager Sherman. I was on council when after we had looked at it, we looked at the urban renewal situation and we looked at another resident trying to buy property also, and we decided at that time not to accept the bid, and we voted it down for future development in that area. And there was an offer made at that time that we did not accept. It was just a regular business deal that we turned down. There was an actual offer. We looked at the offer and we declined for those specific reasons of keeping that property together for redevelopment at that time. So this has come before council prior to this new council. We voted it down.
So just a couple things. So, what I'm aware of, and what's on the second page of this map, is, and I don't want to say the family name, but there's a family that owned their family home on South Albion Street. And I guess they had been upkeeping the lot behind their home. And so, it's the little tab right here. We did sell that to them. But the question, so I think there is precedence for doing that. But I guess my question is, to Attorney Harkness, is you mentioned about a public hearing. Did we have to your knowledge, and like I said, I'm operating with my memory right now, we sold that to that family after, I want to say after the charter amendment, right? But then I don't think we did. Did we have a public hearing for that?
I think we did. Yes, we did.
Okay. Okay.
It was very brief. I don't think anybody
Okay.
showed up. I don't think anybody contested it.
Okay.
I think we opened, closed, and.
Okay. Okay. Councilmember French, Councilmember Barnes.
Actually,
Well, you spoke.
okay,
You've already
thank you.
yeah.
I think we did the same thing on the 900 block of West Erie. There's a lot that goes up to the cul-de-sac that seems to be all one property. I think we did that as well. Like 906 or something. West Erie Street.
West Erie.
It extends all the way up to the Culver Circle. You see it? See Culver Street? Three properties west. That property extends all the way up.
Okay.
Culver Creek.
Oh, this one? I think so. Oh, I can't remember. We may have.
I think we did.
Councilmember French, yeah.
I think the question that we have before us, one question would be, in both of those examples, it's an adjacent property, not three other adjacent properties.
Yeah.
So I think that's what we have to decide.
And I think part of, so basically kind of, sorry, Councilmember Barnes.
The reason that we sold the property off of Albion and I think it's Cass Street was because the resident only had a small piece. It wouldn't make a difference in the aggregate part of a large development. You know, I'm not against selling this property here as it stands, as this resident wants to buy it, but I would hope that we get all the particulars right, because I think that Bishop and Mitchell show due diligence in attempting to work with the resident, and the resident did give an offer. So ultimately, the council turned it down.
So the sense I get is I don't think there's really any major disagreement here. I think what there's a concern about, what the communication was in this in explaining the process. We're going to fix that. So now that we know that there needs to be an actual monetary offer made, that'll happen, and I'm sure there's a way to find out the actual, because these properties actually have a value right now.
It's included in the packet.
Okay.
Yep. Assessor's reports should be.
Yeah. So they have a value. We know that. So then an offer can be made, and then when it does, when the offer does come to us, what we can do is we can say, basically, what Councilmember Barnes is saying. Well, in these two previous instances, we've allowed basically the combination. I don't know if it's necessarily a combination of the plots, but we've basically offered land that was like directly adjacent to the original property, and just one other, one piece that's directly adjacent.
I don't think you have to do that unless you're a land bank.
Councilman Reed?
Cullen, does the city have to accept an offer, or can the city set a price that they'd sell these properties for?
You're saying just set a price, like arbitrary, regardless if you had interest in it?
Right. I mean, it's city property. We've had this property. I've lived in this town for 25 years, and this property has sat there vacant. The city's mowed it every year. There's been a cost to the city. You don't get any taxes off of it. So why are we hanging on to property that is otherwise wanted by other people that we can get taxes off of? My only suggestion on it would be that we don't allow more than two properties to be combined into one, so that we don't have one large property there, but rather two separate properties.
So, was that a hand? Councilman Frank? Yeah, okay, go ahead.
Thank you.
The total cost is $40,703. I agree with our interim city manager that it's nice to get property that we own and mow and take care of off our workers' rolls. If I look at what's available in that section, I don't know if I agree with the manager's decision to make it one big parcel instead of a couple smaller ones. But again, I don't know enough about it. I think you could imagine there's an L-shaped property, you know, to the north of all the properties we're talking about. And so if you wanted to make it into two larger parcels, but not one big one, you could imagine incorporating those two as well into a property. But we also don't know what the prospective owner wants to do with that property. So if he just wants a big yard, and we keep the property separate, just owned by one individual, rather than combining them into one parcel, I think I'd be still okay with that. If they wanted to build something that encompasses multiple properties, that would have to come to planning commission for variances and all that other stuff, and there are normal processes involved with that. So
I'm having a little flashback to planning commission because we were talking about some of these similar kinds of things. Like, so the thing that comes to mind right now, it's like I said, I'm trying to be conscious of council's time this evening. One is, we have a value, like I said, it's in the packet, of how much all four of these pieces of property would be. But that still doesn't mean the person has to offer that amount, right? They could,
you just have to have you can sell it for less than fair market value as long as you have a hearing.
So that's basically at the person who's interested in purchases, give us your best number, and then we go back and have that discussion. So that's the first thing. The second thing is the question about what interim manager Kip was saying about, right now it's 4 different parcels. And I think it does make sense to a certain extent to say, well, if it hasn't sold, if someone's willing to pay the taxes, that's a positive. But again, that's something the council's going to have to decide. The only question I have is, would there need to be a reason to combine them? And
one thing I would say, and I'd have to check with our assessor on this, there are regulations about the combining parcels.
Okay.
I know it can't always be done for just any reason. I know that there's regulations, like, for example, you know, if it's being combined with a parcel with a residence on it and things like that. So if the council's looking at combining all 4 lots, we're going to have to check with our assessor about that first. I know that's been an issue in the past.
yeah, because that's basically like, you know, I guess if someone purchases those things and we agree with them, then it's, you know, it's their property. But like I said, I do like the idea of keeping them separate if possible. But again, that's something that we negotiate if we decide. So I think, Councilmember Brown, but I don't think we're going to make a decision tonight. So
you pretty much hit what I was going to say.
Okay.
As far as thank you.
So I think, so hopefully, maybe even tonight, there can be some discussion with that owner of just about a checklist of what they need to give us. They can give that to us in terms of, you know, an offer.
I don't think it has to be anything fancy other than, you know, a letter to either clerk or the manager or whatever, saying I want to offer X amount of money for all 4 lots, or X amount of money for lot this number, lot this number, this number, however they want to do it. But just the letter, I think, would be sufficient to constitute an offer to the city.
Okay. And then we can have that discussion once it's here about the other stuff. And it'll also allow us to talk to Director Tracy about maybe the details about, like I said, I feel like I'm having deja vu after Planning Commission about what goes on lots and combining them. So, Councilmember Lawler.
Thank you, Mayor. Wasn't there something that was put in place about when the city sells properties that I remember our former city manager, Dr. Mitchell, talking about selling these properties. So I was just wondering if her and our director, Mr. Tracy, had something written down about how the process would go to sell these properties. And if I can remember right, I remember hearing like a $200.
That's for personal property.
Oh, okay. Got
Okay, so we're going to, we're just a motion to postpone until we actually have an offer. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor say yes?
Yes.
Opposed? Okay, so we've postponed that until we actually have an offer. Okay, just an update on City Hall staff, and we want to kind of discuss what's going on with
As far.
like Stacy and the interim, just kind of,
Okay.
if you want to say that.
Well, I think everybody's heard now that our Assistant City Manager, Stacy Levin, will be leaving. Her last day of work is this Friday. Currently, I have no plans to make any changes as far as hiring new employees for that position. If I do anything, it'll probably be a temporary employee that can come in and pick up and do some secretarial work, basically, until we can get a new manager. As a interim city manager, I don't see it as my role to fill positions permanently for people. I would rather leave that up to the permanent city manager once they get here to make those decisions. So anything I would do in the meantime will be temporary. So.
Thank you. And cool. Okay. Last items at L. Request approval for boards and commission appointments and reappointments. So I'm going to appoint Greg Strand to the Planning Commission, and so that's going to basically complete Scott Brown's term, and then Joe Domingo to the Albion Building Authority, and that'll expire in December of 31st of 2020. We can take these separately because I think that's been what we've done. So, is there a motion to approve Greg Strand?
So moved.
Is there a second? Is there any discussion? Okay, he was formerly on the Planning Commission. So, roll call vote, please.
Councilmember French.
Yes.
Barnes.
Yes.
Reed.
Yes.
Brown.
Yes.
Lawler.
Yes.
Spicer.
Yes.
And Mayor Brown.
Yes, and for Joe Domingo to the Albion Building Authority, is there a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Councilmember French.
Who is stepping off, or was this a vacant position?
I want to say this was a vacant because I think Scott was on, like, I don't know, 6 boards. Scott Brown was on a number of boards, and so when he
Oh, right, okay.
yeah, so I think it kind of cleared a lot of boards. Is there any further discussion?
Is he up for it?
Huh? Yeah.
Is he up for it?
Will he apply? Is there any further discussion? Okay, seeing none, roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Barnes.
Yes.
Reed.
Yes.
Brown.
Yes.
Lawler.
Yes.
Spicer.
Yes.
French.
Yes.
And Mayor Brown.
Yes. Are there any future agenda items? Councilmember Barnes.
Yeah, asbestos inspection, 608 Austin Avenue.
Okay. Are there any other future agenda items?
Sale of the property? Are we going to sell the property?
Oh, yes, sell the properties if, well, pending if we get it,
Pending an
the offer, yeah. Okay. Councilmember French.
We're presumably going to meet with Scott, the attorney, regarding council rules. Do we want to put a slot in the agenda? Should there be some recommendations about modifying our council rule just as a placeholder, or do you want to?
I don't think he's going to be, I don't know how quickly he's going to do that, because I think we can do it. I have no problem with it. But I think what's going to happen, we're going to meet with him. He's going to, make the changes to bring him back. So it might be, I know there's definitely going to be one in-person session, if not 2. So we'll put it on there, but, yeah.
I just, I won't be at the meeting, so I
Oh,
don't
okay.
mind it not being there. I just wanted to know, just trying to expedite things.
Okay.
If there was something that,
We'll put it on there, just for, an update. No, it's,
particularly I was thinking about parliamentarian and how we interpret that.
Okay. Seeing no future agenda items, everyone is here. Public comments, persons addressing the city council shall limit their comments to no more than 3 minutes. And we ask you to observe proper decorum. Please state your name and address. Are there any public comments this evening?
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
Okay, Stacy Levin, Assistant City Manager for a few more days. Okay, just a plug for the French Market. This year's French Market will be Saturday, June 9th from 9 a.m. to 2 p.m. So I hope to see everybody there.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Lonnie Burr, 1200 Hillside Road. I want to hear talk about the project Rising Tide. We finally got some potential investors working with Double Vision finally, and it's looking good. But I want to say there's kind of like what we heard about that. Once we get open, what we're going to be doing, we're going to be running most of our business as a business. We are a nonprofit, but the business part, we're going to have to keep it business. So we're going to be tied in with the school. What I'm going to do, I'm going to go up to the school and get a contract with the school where the kids can come down to the skating rink. That's one project we're going to do. Further than the senior citizen, we are going to tie into bring the elderly down to the building to where they can walk around the floor and do different type of exercise, things like that when it comes to health. Then at the same time, we're going to give them, inform them with different programs around Albion where they can get help when it comes to different services. So that's another thing that we're going to be tied into, going to be doing. And that's the things I wanted to share when we do connect and meet back up, with everybody. Just to let everybody know, it's just not just, so we're going to be tied in with a lot of different things. So, and then last but least, once we get going, I already talked to Larry about this. We wanted to tie into what he's doing, and we can tag team also with him when it comes to recreation, and that also will help with some of the costs and a win-win for both of us. So that's pretty much what I wanted to say.
Thank you.
Commissioner Tompkins.
Mr. Mayor, council members, interim manager Kip, Clerk Domingo, residents of the city of Albion, and folks watching this evening, good evening. Gary Tompkins, your county commissioner. I just take 30 seconds of your time tonight because I know we're running late. I apologize. I don't want to take much of your time. As you were talking about housing being something that's very, very needed, certainly in the city of Albion, well, I just want to take the opportunity. On April 17th, I participated in a White House Intergovernmental Affairs teleconference with J. Ron Smith, Special Assistant to the President, and a member of the Domestic Policy Council to discuss what they call opportunity zones. And these opportunity zones is a new community development program established by Congress in the Tax Cut and Job Acts of 2017 to encourage long-term investments in low-income urban and rural communities. This program provides a tax incentive for investors to reinvest their unrealized capital gains into opportunity funds that are dedicated to invest in opportunity zones designated by the governor, for instance, in each state. Well, Michigan is one of 18 states that did qualify and has received approval from the Department of Treasury to participate in this program. And then Michigan had the opportunity to designate 288 opportunity zones, and I'm happy to announce tonight that the city of Albion has been included as a selection in that opportunity zone. So it's great news, certainly for the city of Albion, and again, as it coincides with not only your funding as it relates to Project Rising Tide and the different things at the state level. But preliminary information indicates an opportunity fund can be utilized as a primary investment in a variety of activities. And funds can be used to create new businesses, new commercial and residential real estate or infrastructure. So there's a lot of opportunities. So you have folks, again, with another opportunity that if you have investors that are interested certainly in investing in the city of Albion, this is yet another opportunity for them to certainly help them in terms of making it worth their while to come to the city of Albion and reinvest their expected capital gains. That was the only thing I had for this evening. I just wanted to take that opportunity to let you know that I will just continue to advocate for the city of Albion as we move forward. So you guys, a lot of great things going on, and I'm glad to certainly do anything I can to be part of it. So with that being said, all of you have a wonderful evening.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I forgot to mention when I was speaking about the grants earlier to thank Assistant City Manager Stacy Levin for her effort in the grant writing, and Andrew Trexel for his effort in grant writing, and Officer Carrie Lynn Noppy in the back for her effort in the grant writing and the grants that we got this last week.
Thank you. Okay, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Support. Moved and supported. All those in favor say yes. 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 Opposed? This meeting is adjourned.
No, you can keep that.
Okay.